program at Hunter. And I'm also the program director for the new online program. So I'm thrilled to see all of you here and I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit more about the program and answering any questions that you might have about it. All right, so in terms of what I'll cover today, I wanted to start off by sharing a bit more about what makes the online program at Hunter a little bit unique. I'll also walk through the curriculum, so what kind of classes you'll be taking, how the program is structured, and share a little bit more about who you'll be learning from. You'll also hear from a former student who previously took their planning studio online at Hunter, and they'll share what it's really like to take planning courses in an online format, especially when it comes to collaboration and group work. And then after that, I'll go over the application process and share a little bit more about what you'll need to apply. And finally, I'll leave time at the end for questions that you might have about the program. Right. So before we dive into the program itself, I just wanted to take a minute to orient you a little bit to Hunter and the Urban Policy and Planning Department, since some of you might not be very familiar with it. So Hunter College is part of the University of New York. It's one of the senior colleges at CUNY, and it's an R2 research institution. Within Hunter, the Urban Policy and Planning Department is really focused on preparing students to gain the technical skills that they need to work as urban planners, while also centering social justice and equity in that work. Our department was founded in 1965 by Paul Davidoff, who many of you might know was really a leading social advocacy planner who advocated for the interests of underrepresented communities. And that legacy really shapes our program today. Our department really has a deep commitment to equity. It's not just an idea, but something that is really embedded in how we teach and how we train the next generation of planners. So we've always had a strong, well-established in-person Masters of Planning program. And what we're doing now is extending that same curriculum into an online format through this new online MUP option. So it's the same core degree and the same academic rigor, just designed to be a bit more flexible for students who might be working full time or who might not be based in New York or would simply want a bit more of a flexible schedule. So one question we get a lot is, what makes this program unique? And so I wanted to take a minute to talk about what makes this online MUP program a little bit different than other programs that are out there. So the first thing is that our program is actually the first and currently the only 100% synchronous online planning program in the US. So what this means is that when you log into your classes, you're there live learning together with your classmates and your instructor. So you're not just watching pre-recorded lectures, you're part of really a full-time, real-time interactive classroom. And we've designed the program this way very intentionally. Planning is a very collaborative field, and communication is a big part of being a planner. So as a planner, you're often doing things like leading a public meeting. And so we want to make sure that you're building those communication skills throughout the program by being able to, discuss your ideas in groups and engage with other faculty and peers in the program. And then the other thing is that this live format, creates a lot of opportunities for networking. Our faculty will regularly bring in guest speakers who are working in professional planning practice. And being in a synchronous setting means that you can actually interact with them. So ask your questions, make connections, and start to be able to build your professional network even while you're in the program. And finally, we've kept the program intentionally small. So class sizes are capped at 15 students. So you can, we've designed it that way so you can get to know your peers and develop a sense of community in the online program that way. So another thing that sets this program apart is the cost. Hunter offers one of the most affordable Masters of Planning programs in the country. The degree cost about $22,000 for New York residents and about $27,000 for out-of-state residents. And just to emphasize, uh, that's not the cost per year. That's the cost for the entire 48 credit degree. So this program really is delivering exceptional value and a rigorous planning education for um, at a much more accessible price point than many comparable programs. So the curriculum of our program, which I'll talk about in a little bit more depth in a minute, is really designed to help you build the kinds of in-demand planning skills that employers are starting to really look for in the field. So we have three concentrations. The first is a general planning concentration. So this concentration is designed to give you really a broad, versatile foundation for a career in planning. So in this concentration, you'll build very practical job ready skills and things like conducting zoning analysis, working with communities, or working on GIS projects. We also have a built environment concentration, and that is focused on how planning shapes physical spaces and urban development. So, in this concentration, you'll work on things like transportation analyses and zoning analysis. And I'll talk more about that concentration in a minute. And then we also have an urban informatics concentration. And so this track is a bit more technical and focuses on building skills in areas like GIS, spatial analysis, and data analysis. You'll take classes in learning how to program in Python, and there's also some graphic communication classes that are part of that concentration too. So that concentration is a really great option if you're interested in working with data and technology in a planning context. So another thing that really distinguishes the MUP online program is its focus on equity. Equity is really built into the DNA of our program. I mentioned earlier that our program was founded by a social advocacy planner, and that legacy really continues to shape how we think about planning education today. So you'll see that emphasis on equity throughout our program. Many of the classes are explicitly grounded in questions of equity and social justice. So it's not just something that we talk about in theory, but something that really is integrated throughout the curriculum and how we approach planning practice. And finally, another important part of our program is a sense of community that we're trying to build. We don't want this to feel like a set of disconnected online classes. We want this to feel like a cohort where you actually get to know your peers and are learning together. And so we're doing that in a couple of ways. So first, all of our classes, as I was mentioning before, are fully synchronous. So there's a lot of kind of real-time interaction built into those classes. We also have a required in-person multi-day orientation in New York City that will happen before you start the program. And so that's a chance to actually meet your classmates in real life and connect with faculty before you actually start the program. And then finally, online students will have access to Hunter's really engaged alumni network and graduate student organizations. Both of those organizations regularly organize social and professional development related events. And if you're in the New York City region, you're more than welcome to attend any of those in-person events that might be happening. Right, so I want to segue to talking a little bit about our curriculum. So the online MUP program is a 48 credit degree, and it's structured in a way to try to give you both a strong foundation in planning and a lot of flexibility to tailor the degree to your specific interests in planning. So you'll have 18 credits of core courses. These are your foundational classes where you build grounding in areas like urban history and theory, GIS, professional planning practice. So it's really the base of the degree. You also take 6 credits of Planning Studio. This is, in my opinion, one of the most exciting parts of the program. You'll be working in teams on a real world planning project in partnership with a client organization. So it's very applied and hands on, and a great way to kind of get a feel for what aspect of planning you might be interested in. And then you'll also take 12 credits in your area of concentration. So you'll choose between concentrations in general planning, the built environment, or urban informatics. And then finally, you'll have 12 credits of electives. So this is really where you get to shape the program around your specific interests. We offer electives in things like environmental impact review, placemaking, housing, and a number of other different special topic areas. Right. So to talk a little bit more about the concentrations, the first is the general planning concentration. This is really designed to help you build specialized expertise across some of the core subfields of planning. So this includes areas like transportation planning, housing finance, and environmental planning. And so rather than narrowing into one single niche right away, this concentration is really designed to give you the opportunity to build more of a broad but still somewhat focused toolkit. So the built environment concentration looks at how planning shapes physical spaces and urban development. And you'll take classes in things like placemaking, sustainability, transportation, and real estate. You'll also develop skills in things like project management, policy and site analysis, community engagement, and environmental review. So all of these concentrations are really oriented around equipping you with the skills that you'll need to become a planner. Next, we have the urban informatics concentration. This concentration is focused on building quantitative and technical skills that are becoming more and more important in planning practice. So in this track, you'll learn things like statistical and spatial analysis, data visualization, and programming skills. So really building a strong foundation for working with data in an urban context. A big emphasis of this concentration is also learning how to translate that technical work in a way that's accessible and useful for different stakeholders. Since communicating findings to different groups, some that might not have technical background is something that planners routinely have to do. And then you'll also engage with some of the limitations of big data. So in your classes, you'll spend time talking about data ethics and governance and what it means to collect and use data in a responsible way when you're a planner. Okay, and then finally, you'll take 6 credits of studio. So this is the capstone experience in the online program where, as I was mentioning before, you'll collaborate with a real world client on an applied planning project. So our studios in the past have focused on a number of different timely planning issues. So for example, students have worked on a studio project related to the Interborough Express, which if you're based in the New York City region, you might know that the IBZ or IBX is the proposed light rail project that would be connecting Brooklyn and Queens. Here we have an example of an online studio report that Studio created a couple of years ago. This was a report where students had partnered with the Right to Counsel New York City Coalition to try to analyze data surrounding tenant experiences in the housing court system. So the studio is really where I'd say everything comes together. You're applying the skills that you built throughout the program to a real world project. So courses in the online program are taught by full-time faculty and practicing professional adjuncts who we're recruiting from across the country, which is one of the benefits of an online program. And just to give you a sense of who you'll be learning from, here are a few of the instructors that will be teaching in the program. We have trained architects, practicing planners working across a range of different public and private sector roles, and also professionals working in the affordable housing development field. So you're really will be learning from people who are actively engaged in the field and uh, who have that real world experience that they can bring directly into the classroom. I also wanted to highlight that you'll also have the chance to learn from guest speakers through a number of different virtual events that we'll host through the program. The department regularly hosts online programming like panel discussions, book talks, conversations with practitioners. For example, we recently hosted a Zoom book talk with Carter Lavin, who recently published a book about transportation advocacy and his experiences working in the field. So, beyond your coursework, there are also opportunities to engage with planning issues through these different guest speakers that we'll bring in through online programming opportunities. Great. And finally, I wanted to talk about career options and outcomes. So, with a master's degree from this program, you'll be qualified to uh, pursue a number of different careers in a variety of private, public, and nonprofit fields. Since this is a new program, I we don't yet have program specific employment data that we can share, but what I can point to is really the strong track record of our established in person master's program here at Hunter. So, in that program, just to share a few statistics, 96% of graduates secured planning or planning related positions within 12 months of graduating. So, students have done really well post graduation. And as a student in the online program, you'll also have access to Hunter's very engaged alumni network. We have a number of different distinguished alumni who work in the public and private sector in the New York City region and also beyond. And they've been really helpful resources to helping students land positions post graduation. So a number of our alumni are listed on our website if you're interested in learning more about where those folks work. And again, that's definitely a resource that you'd be able to tap into as an online student. Great. So I wanted to give you a sense of what taking online classes at Hunter really looks like and pass it over to someone who's actually done it firsthand. So we're lucky to have Stephen Hanrahan with us here today. Stephen is currently a program analyst at the District Department of Transportation. And he's going to talk a little bit about his experience in the program and what it was like taking his studio online and some other classes online as well. So take it
Thanks.
away, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Jenna. And hey, everyone. Hope you guys are doing good. Um, yeah, there was some good photos there of our online studios. Definitely a bit of a throwback to 2020. And I saw the other group too, and I overlapped a lot with a lot of those guys as well. So tried to take a little screenshots. Maybe I'll share with the people I'm still in contact with. I'm like, wow, it's like 6 years ago now. Time flies by. Um, But yeah, my name is Steven. I went to Hunter. I was in the Masters in Urban Planning program. It was only in person. And then COVID-19 came and we went to virtual, of course. And then it was all virtual. And so I think I was a full-time student and I started the program in January of 2019. And then I graduated in December of 2020. So I did 2 semesters and then a little bit of summer in person in 2019. And then in 2020, I about like till March, of course, I was in person and then we went all to Zoom. And so then I had our studio was in December with Professor Bloom, who I believe is still there. And that was all online. Um, but yeah, I mean, so first things first, I mean, Hunter is also like, Hunter is great. I really liked it a lot. I think I was actually like listening into some of the presentation, like I honestly don't remember so much about like concentrations and electives. I maybe the program has changed a bit. I just remember like there was a studio and there was like classes. So that might be new, but it's also great too. I think I had a concentration. I don't even remember what it was. I was like sustainability. But it was great. I mean, I think, a lot of the Hunter faculty, I think are really caring individuals. I think that, Hunter is and well, I would say first of all, I'd say like, urban planning generally working in the public realm, right? And so I think there's something to be said about going to a public university to be working in the public realm. You just kind of, it just goes hand in hand and you kind of, learn things or experience things. And when we were in the building, like the elevator wasn't working sometimes, and we're like, hey, this is part of the adventure. This is part of the process. This is what people deal with all the time, elevators and the MTA and all this stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that was really important. And then I also think just the faculty itself was just like so caring, really caring people to, dedicate their time for the purposes of that. And just like, a lot of faculty were so in depth in like New York City and just knew so many different things about New York and had so many different contexts for New York, or then also other regions too, like just like the region in general and like the suburbs a little bit, which are things that like growing up in New York, I, didn't understand so much about how suburban planning worked a little bit. So that was actually the reason why I took the oh, are you guys can you hear me? Okay,
Yeah,
sorry. I just
yeah,
lost
you're good.
the gallery view for some reason. Um, there's also like all these crazy squirrels on my window. I wish I could show you this. I might actually. This is just like kind of crazy. There's like all these crazy squirrels here. I don't know if you can see this, but it's kind of nuts. I live in DC now. It's a little quieter. It's a little more country like. But we definitely have yeah, sometimes there's a little more animals around. So
Yeah,
this
this is
pond.
one of the benefits of an online degree. You can see what other people are looking at outside their window.
You can see other people looking at. Yeah, we got to know people's as dogs and their cats. Yeah, and so I mean, so to as Jenna is saying, so get to the specifics of the online degree. I think that having when we switched to online, I mean, I have to say, um, I was working like 14-hour kind of days before. Um, before we switched to online, like I had a couple different internships and I had like a part-time job and I was kind of piecemealing all this stuff together. Then I had, night classes at Hunter and I would like get out of class at 9:30 and city bike home to my parents' house on the Upper West Side and, get back like 10 and have dinner and then like go to work the next day like 8. It was like it really was like a lot. And so just kind of taking out that commute. And I remember there was this one class I would take on like Monday nights, 7:30, and it's a Monday, and 9:30. And we like sat and it was sat next to this girl. And I remember she was like, yeah, I got to go home to like Long Island right now. And I was just like, oh my God, like just crazy. So I think I think first of all, I think that the online degree, I think, I don't know where everyone is kind of in their lives and stuff like that. Or if you live in New York or how close you are to Hunter, but I think, having a flexibility, not having to commute is just a huge thing. And being able to kind of take classes at home, if you have a full-time job, being able to just kind of take classes, in your living room, having dinner. there, I think just kind of, makes it more involved. Because like there was sometimes I would take classes in person and I would be almost asleep by the end of the day because I was just so tired. And I actually never had that when we were online because it was so uh we were so involved. We were so involved. And so then, yeah, so speaking specifically about so I would say one, first and foremost, the flexibility and the sense of being able to kind of accommodate a schedule online is just so much more superior. Um, I would say two is that, in speaking specifically to our studio that we took, we really had a lot of guest lectures and a lot of guest presentations. Our studio was on adaptive reuse in Westchester office parks, which I wanted to take because I had no idea what it was about, and I didn't know much about Westchester, and I didn't know much about office parks. But I wanted to kind of like learn something different about like a different context, more suburban, and just kind of expand my horizons. Um, and we had all these presentations from people from Westchester, and we had presentations from some private companies like developers and community private community planners, and just kind of like gained a whole different, a little bit of opening of a world. And I think that if we were in person completely for that, it would have been a little harder for them to really go out of their way to come to Hunter and do that. So I think there's the benefit of the online lecture guest presentations was also great. Um, and then uh, three, I would say that like yeah, I think that we had some really good like breakout rooms in our studio. The studio itself is also, I guess you guys are getting still haven't done the program yet, but the studio itself is I think it's like 3 hour 3 hour class, 3 hour like sessions. It's very long. It's very involved. Our Professor Bloom would say like just being present for 3 hours is actually the exercise in and of itself. Because if you ever go to like a planning meeting or a community meeting, they go really long. So um, that in and of itself is good practice. But yeah, we had some really good like breakout rooms and stuff like that that kind of, then like pulled different people together, and we got to hear like different voices who people who maybe a little shyer on in person or in like the general Zoom we would be able kind of to share more and have like good discussions there. And then we also use tools like we use this thing called Miro, which I think was like really popular like when we first went to Zoom. Haven't seen it so much in a while, but it's still around. And it's like this online kind of like whiteboard. And we did like a lot of our presentation, a lot of our like studio draft work with like kind of what we were going to talk about and like what our like idea was that we were going to try and like present on what we should do with office parks. We did that on Miro. And then I actually started when I started this job at DDOT and like March, it was like 3 or 4 months later, we were using Moreau. So I was like, wow, like I know how to do this. And everyone was like, and the consultant was like, oh yeah, this is like this new thing. And I was like, I did this. I just did this in planning school. This is so cool. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that the online really offers a lot. I mean, I think, again, I don't know where you guys all are, but I feel like online versus in person. I mean, you probably have since COVID, probably all have some experience being online in some degree, and so a lot of ways it kind of it translates over. It's not as different as maybe you think it would be, and I think there are a lot of benefits and like the flexibility. I think the education components are still just as great. There's another class we took with like the with quantitative analysis, I think, and we were doing like a little bit of coding. And I think like the screen share was really helpful in that situation too, where, if we were just like on a presentation or like kind of on a computer, like the distance of it, I think would have been a little harder to feel like we were really more immersed with that there. Um, yeah, and then finally, I'll say that so then I was like in the studio, and then I was like also kind of working a little bit, but not working. And then I was checking my Gmail, and Hunter has like a kind of a listserv for job opportunities for graduates, and randomly saw one. And I applied because you didn't need a cover letter, which was great. I hate cover letters. And I um, a month and a half later, they called me for an interview, and then they said I was the candidate. So that's actually how I got this job in DC and from Hunter. So, you never know. I think the Hunter at this point too, I think, Hunter grads are kind of a little bit all over the place more. And there's certainly a lot in New York, but also a lot of different places. And um, yeah, and I think they're kind of a little bit of a special breed. And so, shout out to just the graduate network itself too, and the networking and the job I got from it too. So yeah, cheers to that. Yeah, I don't really know. I don't know what else I should say, but like let me know, Jenna, or if anyone has any questions or something, happy to answer.
Yeah, thank you, Steven. That was awesome. Yeah, maybe I'll just share a little bit more about the application process and then open it up to students for Q&A. And if any students have questions, please feel free to direct them also towards Steven. That sounds good.
Cool.
All right, thanks, Steven. All right, so I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the application process. So if you're interested in applying to the program, there are four main components to it. So the first is the core application form. So mostly what this is collecting is just, basic data, application data in terms of, your address and your CV. But along with that, you'll also submit a 500-word personal statement. You'll submit two letters of recommendation and then transcripts for any schools that you attended, including college and above. So just a flag, the GRE is not required, and the application fee for submitting the application form is $75. We often get questions about recommendation letters. So ideally, these recommendation letters should come from a professional supervisor or a former instructor for a class that you've taken who's able to sort of speak to your academic or your professional strengths. So we're actively recruiting for our fall 2026 cohort. The application deadline is May 15th. That's our sort of priority deadline. So applications that we received after May 15th will be reviewed on a rolling basis, but we do recommend trying to get your application in by May 15th to receive sort of priority consideration. Uh, all right, so I think that's all I wanted to cover. If you're interested in applying to the program, I'd really encourage you to set up a time to chat with me briefly about the program. I'd love to hear a little bit more about you and what your professional interests are and whether this program seems like it could be a good fit for you. So I'll put my Calendly link in the chat if you want to put a time on my calendar. If the times on my Calendly don't work for you, you can feel free to also just shoot me an email, and my email address is there. So I think I'll leave it at that. But I wanted to leave time to make sure that you can get any questions that you have answered about the program. So I will stop sharing my screen and open it up for the rest of you.